right, what's up, everybody? This is a very special podcast. It is both the Ferment and We Are Vineyard, and we're doing it all. I mean, this is literally the magic of podcasting, and this is an episode where we're going a little deeper into a history of the vineyard with song, and we have our very special friend Brian Doerksen here. Brian, thanks for coming on the pod again. You're like a vineyard podcast professional.
Oh boy. I don't know if I can live up to that label.
Oh, I mean, that's a really high title in our world.
Perhaps the tallest, the best.
It is. It's one of them.
It is one of them. We're so glad to have you here. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for coming to the conferences all the way down from Canada for this night to lead. I know it was a special moment for so many people to have you there. And so we're just grateful. So thank you.
Glad to be here.
Absolutely. We thought, I know you've done a lot on the Ferment. Some of our We Are Vineyard listeners are definitely familiar with your songs and your worship and your leading, but might be a little less familiar with you personally. And so would you tell us a little bit about where it all began? Let's start where all good stories start. Where were you born? Where'd you grow up? Tell us just a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm from Abbotsford, British Columbia, which is 2 hours north of Seattle, just across the border into Canada, or an hour east of Vancouver. It's interesting because I was born there. My parents bought a little farmhouse when I was 4 on 5 acres. I still live there.
Wow.
I was raised there. I've raised my children there. You know, I can walk out our door and go lie on the little hillside under the ginkgo Balboa tree that Mr. Kawano planted in 1937, and I say I hear the whispers of God. You know, it's like, so place really matters to me. And yet I have this incredible privilege of going to different parts of the world and experiencing life and God's presence and culture and people, and then always going back to that place. My connection with the vineyard is quite interesting. I was 19, and my mom just heard of this guy named John Wimber, and she said to me, Brian, I think there's something there in this, the way this person, he's talking about the kingdom of God, but the way you experience it is utterly fresh and unique. And she just had this sense that it was for me, and my mom, you know, we lost her almost 11 years ago. I still miss her every day, but she was just a woman of prayer. And a very, very wise, intuitive kind of person. I was working my job, and I heard that there was going to be this John Wimber conference in Kansas City. Okay, I literally go to my boss. I'm like 19 years old, whatever, and I say, I really kind of like don't want to do this to you, but I have this strong sense. I was actually going to be leaving that job anyway a few weeks later, that I need to cut out early because I think I'm supposed to be at this event. So 3 of us, my wife, my dear wife Joyce, and a friend, we pile into this little Hyundai Pony and we drive 40 hours straight.
No.
40 hours
Brian.
Straight.
40 hours?
Yes. So all we do is we rotate the 3. The things you do when you're 19, right?
Yeah.
So much
Yeah,
energy,
it makes sense.
passion.
It makes sense. You're like, yeah, that's totally fine. I would love to do that.
Well, the thing was, by the time we found out about the conference and our situation, that's as quickly as we could pull our stuff together and get in a car and go. We drove 40 hours and we arrived literally about an hour before the conference started.
Gosh.
And we had taken shifts, like sleeping in the back seat. Like there would always be one awake driver, of course.
Yeah, somebody talking.
One shotgun in the driver's seat and one person resting. And we just rotated through that way. Anyway, we walked in the back, and Patty Kennedy became Patty Marine, Patricia Marine, and Danny Daniels walked up on the stage, you know, blue jeans, casual dress. I came from a Mennonite Brethren background where, you know, you dress up for church. You, even if you don't wear suits all week, you had put on a suit for Sunday, all of that stuff.
Were you wearing a suit?
No, I was
Okay,
not.
that's good.
I was definitely not wearing a suit. We just driven 40 years. But I walked in the back, and I think a lot of people have had this experience with Vineyard, right? Okay, so I walk in the back. I don't know a single song. I don't know anything. And I think they start with, "You are here and I," and Patty's voice just like a bell, just like singing. And it's like I start crying, and I feel like, I don't know where I am, but I feel like I'm at home. Like I feel like I've been welcomed by God's love and God's presence, and I'm in. Like,
That was it.
And that was, and then I had a similar experience. Then after that, got back to the Fraser Valley.
40 hours back.
Yeah, 40 hours back.
Gosh. I mean, that's the only thing worse than the 40 hours down. It's the 40 hours home. You're like, oh my gosh.
Here we go again.
And then the Langley Vineyard, which was the very first vineyard church plant in Canada. Gary Best, Andy Park leading worship. And I walked in the back there, and I didn't know a single person. And I felt instant, like, this is home. And, and then a couple of the worship team members actually came up to me at some point after the service, and they, "Oh, you're new here, and, do you play music?" And I go, "Well, actually, I do a bit, and I play bass guitar, and well, you should, you should meet Andy, and you should, and away it went." So
it's amazing.
Yeah. So
will you say more about, I went into the room and I knew I was home, because that's such a common Vineyard story. I've heard that no less than, I don't know, I don't think it's an exaggeration, 100 times or more from different people.
Yeah.
What do you think that is? What is that?
It's presence. Yes. Though it's being in a place where the leaders are absolutely committed to no hype, to letting that presence just be and flow through, and not micromanaging everything. I'm an interesting. It's also because I'm an introvert, so I'm shy by nature. I'm introvert, and most churches are led by extroverts who believe that the most important thing is to kind of like, besides, preaching of the sermon and stuff, but even in that, it's almost like it's to get people wound up a little bit. And Vineyard was kind of like the opposite of that for me. The essence of it was peace and yet expectation. Like, it wasn't like peace that was like capitulation or do you know what I like?
Yeah.
Like peace with presence in it, peace with heart intentionality, and like the 5-step healing model that Wimber and other vineyards taught people of how to pray for people who were unwell or whatever. The key thing at the end was, whatever happens, the most important is that you leave people loved, right? And so it was this kind of love. And also just a willingness just to be themselves, ourselves. Like John Wimber created a culture because he lived it, where he was God-focused and he was leaning into the peace and the presence, but he was doing it in a way that was absolutely himself. He wasn't going to set things in motion that were unsustainable because they were some kind of performance. Anyway, it's hard to put into words, actually.
It is. No, but when you feel it, you know it. I do love what you were saying there about the no hype. I think there's something about that.
Yeah.
Because I think we're all very deeply in tune with manipulation.
Yeah.
Like, we know when something's being required or asked of us, or like, hey, wink, wink, come on now.
Yeah.
And we also know in moments when nothing is required of you.
Yeah.
And I think that might, for me anyway, there's something about that that's home. Like when you go into your mom and dad's house, and you can get anything you want out of the refrigerator. And if you want to lay on the couch and watch football, like whatever.
Yeah.
You know, and nothing's really
Yeah.
needed. There's something there. And again, I agree. It's hard to articulate, but when you said no hype, that's like, oh, I resonate with that.
And the last line of Patty's song, "You are here, your presence here is the answer to the longing of my heart." This, I also think that the lyrics and the music were also part of providing that sense of home, because the lyrics and the music were giving voice, sometimes with words, sometimes just the identification that the song itself was doing, that there is this longing in the human heart for, well, I mean, ultimately, I think, in one sense, it's security and freedom that the human heart longs for the most. But what's so interesting about that is, in order to have freedom, you have to have security. And in order to have that, you have to be able to be loved as you are. You have to have this environment without manipulation.
Yes.
And it was that I was experiencing. And what was interesting too was that as a young musician, and some of the dreams of God and dreams of life that I had dreamt about those things, and I had wanted those things, and I was in my own teenage way starting to try and create those things and foster those things in other people around. But often I felt very alone. And I would go to like church gatherings, and I'd experience hype, and I'd experience things that they were saying and doing from the stage that pushed me back. Like it was like kind of like almost like something physical just pushed me back. And when I arrived, I remember it in Kansas City or in the Langley Vineyard, the local expression of it, both times, I felt the exact opposite. It was like I was being drawn in. Like I could almost physically feel this magnet, it was just like I was just being pulled in, because what I had been longing for and even wanting in my own way to start creating in my little world, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
I'm a part of a whole bunch of people who are leaning into this same thing.
Yeah.
Well, it's like you've shown up at home, a place that you found phone, and then you found family.
Yeah, and family I've never met before.
That's right.
And this has been one of the great treasures of, I think, my journey, and having songs I've written be translated into all these different languages, and I end up in Germany or in, wherever, in Singapore or whatever, and all of a sudden I meet these people and I go, we have a similar longing and even a similar language, heart language, and this is incredible. Like, I'm still, to this day, so grateful for John's yes. When he was in his place of longing and brokenness, and I think of him, playing music at casinos and clubs in Las Vegas, and not just in his own heart, but he's seeing it in culture, manifest, like this longing for real, for love, for presence. And, we have this thing in our culture, there's this psychological term called collective effervescence, where, we as human beings in our cultures, we try and create these experiences where we can have collective effervescence, like where we can get together and we can have this, there's energy and everything. But the thing is, we're so used to that being manipulated and manufactured towards an end that has somebody's benefit, like all of these things to it. And then to experience that collectiveness and even effervescence, if you want to say, but in a very unmanipulated, pure, words are failing me right now,
Well, as you were saying that, even, it reminds me of, oddly enough, it reminds me of the Genesis story in chapter 11 of Tower of Babel. Like, human effort to build transcendence, to reach the heavens while simultaneously avoiding God. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
But the opposite of that is Acts chapter 2, where the Spirit comes down and people get scattered, but rather than there being confusion, there's understanding,
Right.
there's listening, there's presence. But just even while you were talking about that that collective effervescence, what a great term.
Yeah.
It's just, man, that's an old story right there.
Yeah, well, yeah, and think about the Acts 2 thing about how when they're scattered, they actually experience and start community wherever they go.
Yes.
Because your presence is the answer to the longing of my heart is the human condition.
Yes, and God responds right to that.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, hey, let's shift gears just for a second. Can you talk to me about Changed by Your Glory? Especially when we were working on this project, A History of the Vineyard, through song. Casey, Caleb, Nicole, Melissa, me, Annabeth, a few others. One of the things that came up over and over again was somebody would mention this record. And then in the last few months, I've probably had, I don't know, 6 or 8 people say something to me about Changed by Your Glory. Say anything about it. Like, how did you make it? Where did the songs come from? What was happening? Was it just a church record?
Yeah.
I know it's an indie record.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, so October the 1st, 1989.
Yes.
I remember this evening like so clearly because so much changed in my life. What happened was, so a few months before this, Andy Park came to me and said, "Brian, I'm off to plant a church. You know, you are now the worship pastor at the Langley Vineyard." As it go, I was 22 years old, about nearing 23, I think at the time. I just, oh man, okay. And during that season, you know, Andy had been writing, and I had written "I Lift My Eyes Up," "Faithful One," "Refiner's Fire." In that season.
So what was happening in that season? Because the songs you just mentioned there, these are pillar songs in our catalog.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of songs, but these are pillar songs that tend to last through the seasons of life.
They've been around for a while.
Well, you're in your early 20s.
I know. So what was happening?
I mean, I think, boy, how to answer that briefly. I mean, again, going back to Patty's song, "Your Presence Here is the Answer to the Longing of my heart." Like, I was just in a season where that longing was being expressed. Well, first, I was so happy just to sing Eddie Espinosa songs and Carl Tuttle songs and Patty Kennedy songs and Cindy Rethmeyer songs. And I didn't know that I was a songwriter, right? Until something happened where I had this experience. And I think I've actually told maybe part of this story on Ferment about my very first song that Vineyard published, "Father, I Want You to Hold Me." And I experienced a gap where I went, because I knew in my heart, because of an experience I was having with our first baby daughter and the intimacy that Jesus models with Abba, that I wanted that kind of intimate experience and language in a song, and I couldn't find a song that was written that said it, so that gap became my songwriting assignment. So I wrote that song, and for the first time in my life, I experienced using a song that I had written in a context where I thought, well, I'm not a songwriter, you know. I never went to school to study songwriting. But this isn't about technical musicality. This is about heart. Now, eventually, as time goes on, you learn aspects of the craft of working with melody and words, and there are principles. But as I say, there's no rules with songwriting. There's just tools and the heart, really, to fashion something that says what your heart wants to say. But anyway, so then I got rolling with that song, and then once the gate was opened, you know, I had a few weeks later, I had another experience with our first daughter, Rachel, and I recognized that in my delight about being a first-time father as a 23-year-old, I was also overwhelmed with being a first-time father as a 23-year-old, knowing I would let her down. And so I started to sing my prayer, "Faithful One, so unchanging." You know, I need God. I know storms will come. You know, it's interesting now, and I think about, you know, all through the storm, your love is there. Like all of those words, it wasn't like I had been living in terrible storms yet. But somehow, and I think we do this as songwriters. I mean, some can use prophetic language. I can use it just simply to say, I think we as songwriters write the songs before they're needed, so that when they're needed, they're there. So that they're already starting to live in us. And then when we go through something, either collectively as a people or as individually, we're there. So then those songs were starting to bubble. I Lift My Eyes Up. Refiner's Fire was another incredible, profound experience where I had the power of God hit me. Anyway, October 1st, 1989, what happened was we had decided, okay, Andy's gone off to plant a church. These songs are living among us. I'd love it, you know, if our people could like sing them during the week or put them in a cassette player in their car as they're driving, going on a road trip. And why don't we do an evening of worship and hit record? Of course, hitting record at that point wasn't so simple. You had to rent in, you know, special machinery and all of this stuff. But anyway, we and I said, Andy, come on back. You know, you were part of this Langley Vineyard story for the last few years. Come on back and we'll co-lead. I'll do a whole section of songs and then you do a section of songs and we'll kind of co-lead this evening. And I remember we had a prayer time in the afternoon after we got all set up, and it was an incredible. I had another one of those power encounters where I got knocked to the ground. And that's only happened to me 2 or 3 times in my life. And because I grew up German Mennonite. Okay. I will not show emotion or do anything unless it's real. Like I'm just not that kind of person. So when it happens, it happens. Something pops through. Yeah. And I'm on the floor, and the power of God's hitting me, and there's electrical current coursing through every. And I think for the moment, I think God showed up in power to kind of like take me out because I'm too sinful or I'm too presumptuous that we should even do this.
So you're like, I'm going to die.
Yeah, I feel like in the moment, there's this moment where the fire was so intense in my physical body. It was so hot and everything. I thought I'm going to die. I'm going to have a heart attack or something. And then I realized that the fire was love. Like that this whole experience was to say, you're my precious son. I love you. You know, just like you love your first daughter, and you can't almost contain how much affection you have for her. And so anyway, so I get up from that experience dazed, overwhelmed, and then a couple hours later we walk up and on stage and we start with Rich Mullins, you know, the Lord ain't joking when he's, you know, putting on the Ritz when he's whatever, I can't even remember.
Our God is an awesome God.
The chorus, our God is an awesome God, right? Yeah. And then we go into Good to Me, and then I Lift My Eyes Up, and Faithful One. Anyway, these songs, and I remember thinking in the middle when we were recording them, oh, this is really sweet, but I'm not feeling anything. And I recognized after the whole night was over that I had this intense experience in the afternoon when nobody was there preparing, so to speak. And then when we got up in front of the several hundred people, and so then we listened back and we go, oh, that's good. Oh, that's a bit ouch, you know, whatever. Yeah. We got to like mix it or whatever. And I think, okay, and we'll manufacture 300 cassettes, I think it was, for our church. And that's what it'll be. I think it ended up selling something like 70,000 copies with no... Just
kept going.
Yeah, and then it became a CD and everything. But anyway, I have so much affection for that project on the 1st of October. Honestly, almost every 1st of October in my heart, I'm like almost like tasting and feeling and sensing that day.
Yeah, there's just these moments, right?
Yeah.
I love the way that you describe the power of God there as well. Like it's this fire. You think you're going to die, but then you recognize it's love.
Yeah.
What a great way to tell the story. That really reminds me of kind of an Orthodox church understanding of God's love and judgment. I mean, when you read some of the Orthodox fathers, this is how they describe the love of God, that it is fire, and that judgment, and even in their world, like hellfire, is just the love of God wrongly received.
Yeah.
And so that is such a cool, for me, a very cool vineyard image. Like God's love. You're like, wait a minute. I'm not being judged. I'm not being killed. I'm actually being embraced in this moment.
And I guess in a sense too, and refined, like, which was part of the song that I knew we were prepping to sing. It's like you actually have this longing to be useful, to be, so that God's love can flow through you to others, but you're get in your own way. What's that, the U2 line on that song, get out of your own way, like it's kind of like we have to get out of the way, and yet we're still us. That's the paradox of it, right?
You've talked on this a little bit, but what was your writing process early on? Because what I was hearing in some of those stories for the early songs was things that were happening in your life as a father.
Yeah. And
then maybe there were a gap, some sort of a gap, and then you'd write to the gap.
Yeah.
But was that just kind of what you were doing with these early songs, or was there something else?
Well, I think it was also just the longing, the longing for God. It was always what I was experiencing in my relational life with my children, with my wife, with people around me, and then my longing for God. And so I would have something, it would have this moment where I would go, oh, I want to say, pray, sing this. And that would be like the seed. And then I would go, when I use the language of the gap, I would first go, when I have that aha moment, I go, has somebody already provided the song that will express that aha moment? If somebody has, I'm so thankful for them, and I thank you very much for writing the song. I'll use that as my language right now. But if I couldn't find a song that said that, then that became the gap, and that was my song I wrote to fill that gap. And in a way, so that song starting as that aha moment, that I call it, it's like a seed, and in that seed is the DNA of what the song can and should be. And that process hasn't changed for me, really.
You just keep chasing it.
So the rest of my life, whenever I write a song, I don't try and strive to write. I don't have a quota. I don't have, I've got to write, 10 songs this year, or I've got it. No, I just live and wait for the seed of inspiration. And when the seed comes, I go, is it a gap? Or can I find somebody else who's actually said this? And I go, in this season, I need to be singing, whatever that is. But if I can't find that song, I take it as my songwriting assignment. So that process, and now, of course, over the last 35 years of doing this, for some strange reason, providentially, but I think it felt strange at first. Like after the Changed by Your Glory came out, then people would write to us or call into our church office, Brian, can you come and do a songwriting workshop and teach our worship leaders to write songs like you're writing, kind of thing. I remember thinking, why are they asking me? I'm like 23 years old and I've just started. But I'm the son of two teachers. My mom was a kindergarten teacher. My dad was a science teacher. And my dad was always so curious with how things work. And so I just thought, okay, I'm kind of left and right brain. I'm very organized and structured, but I'm also creative. I'm going to figure out part of what is happening in this whole process. And how can I encourage and help other people to do it? And that's what I've done for the last 35 years. I say I ride the bicycle. With one pedal, I keep just waiting and serving and waiting for those seeds of inspiration. And then I write. And then with the other pedal, I mentor and help and encourage other people to do the same thing in their unique way. I tell them, please don't write songs that sound like my songs. Write songs that sound like your songs.
Yeah. It is interesting how I love that idea of just waiting for that seed of inspiration or that little aha moment. Or It's like sometimes a little phrase or an idea. I just have to have the idea. Once I get the idea, then I'm like, okay, I know we can get here.
Yeah.
It might take me a day. It might take me a year.
Yeah.
Certain songs took me a couple years to get all the way to the ground. But you can keep the idea, and I know it's in there if you can just hang on to it.
Yeah, and I also think sometimes we're impatient on the lyric side, because I think often the lyric side is where we often get let down, especially in Christian music and in worship music, because we have way too many dead metaphors in our songs. They no longer speak, but it takes time to find your way so that you have, I say, a fresh way to say the familiar. Now, what's interesting, though, is you also, and especially when you're talking worship, you don't want to get caught in the clever trap that you're trying so hard to be clever, to write words and use words that nobody's used, and you lose the heart. Right? There's a
ditch on either side.
Yeah, there are, absolutely, and we have to learn to walk that out in a way that's true to ourselves, but also true to our community, even and our community will speak, and our community will make choices about which songs they're going to want to keep on singing and which songs they're going to just want to leave in the ditch.
It was for a moment. We'll just move on.
One of the things I hear you saying, though, is for you at least, the discipline isn't on every Tuesday at 10, I sit down and I try to write for 2 hours. That's the discipline. I hear you saying the discipline is staying connected to the Lord, staying connected to yourself and what's happening in your world in that moment, and staying really curious.
Yeah. But what's interesting is I do have a weekly standing appointment to write songs with myself because I would never get to it. And so sometimes it's like I show up, and for me, it's Friday mornings. I show up on Friday morning at 9:00 and I'm so excited. Because I get to walk over to that piano and I'm booked off. But sometimes there's no new aha moment, but I'm musing and I'm reworking an idea I had 3 months ago that I haven't had time to finish. Mm-hmm. So what I'm not trying to generate at that point, I'm not trying to force the aha. I want to stay in that posture of waiting and curiosity. But because I also know over a season of time that this is how I'm called to serve, I also put some structure in my life so that eventually I can finish the songs that I start.
Yeah.
Maybe is another way to say it.
Brian, talk to us about songs that remain evergreen.
No.
Okay, because we just listed several of yours that are, I think, pillars in our catalog when I think about them. Faithful One, Refiner's Fire, I Lift My Eyes Up, Come Now's the Time. I mean, these songs, they did something in the moment, but then they're still songs that we can pull.
Yeah.
Even at my church, if we pull the chorus to Refiner's Fire, no one in the room's like, well, that's old, or no one's like, well, wait a minute.
Maybe they're not saying that out loud.
No, but they're like, but people can go right with it, right? And it's like, well, it's interesting that a song can speak over 4 decades almost, right? So why do you think certain songs keep that evergreen quality where they regardless of style or even the way that culture continues to move on, because worship styles have changed, but certain things just remain. I mean, even here at the conference, both this week and then when we were in Denver, one of the songs that's popped through in several sets, and I'm not saying anything, Melissa's not saying anything, but the worship leaders are resonating with it, is Draw Me Close. It's popped through. Mm-hmm. A couple people have done the whole thing. Some people have just dropped the chorus. But it doesn't matter where you are. If you sing, "You're all I want and you're all I've ever needed," it blows the room in half. So talk to me about your thoughts on evergreen songs.
Wow. Well, there's many aspects to what makes a song evergreen. And as a songwriting instructor, we explore this a lot as far as layers of the craft of what makes an evergreen lyric. Universality, but not just universality. It's that almost mysterious, intangible, poetic way where a turning of a phrase captures people's heart. Like they just go, oh, I wanted to say that, but I didn't have the words to say that.
I knew that.
I knew it.
I knew it.
Yes, exactly. I knew it. I felt it. I've wanted it.
Yeah.
But it took a poet, so to speak, a lyricist, a composer to gather it up. It's like, and even just melodies can do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I can be anywhere, and all of a sudden, if I hear Gabriel's Oboe by Ennio Morricone, I'm absolutely reduced to a puddle of some kind because that melody just does for me. So I think lyrically there's a universality to it, but I think the one of the things that marks evergreen songs is one thing, that they have a unity and a oneness to that song that says whatever that is. You know, Refiner's Fire has this very clear, it's a prayer of consecration so that we could do the will of God. Like it's saying this one thing. And usually the evergreen songs aren't complicated, again, connected to the oneness. They don't rely on verbosity, like all of this volume of words, like I'm going to overwhelm you with all of what I know about this one thing. You know, isn't he beautiful? Beautiful, isn't he? The chiasticness of that, like so, and that's what's interesting in lexical repetition, to use songwriting terminology. There's elements of the art at play that over time you learn. Oh, lexical repetition, like taking key phrases and if they can handle the weight of repetition, and then that inversion pattern that is so clear in the Psalms, you know, you A, B, B, A, right? Yes. You know what I mean? So evergreen songs are gonna say one thing. That one thing is a universal thing.
It's poetic. It's
simple.
It's
poetic. It's simple.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, you can look at thousands, millions of songs that have a lot of those things and haven't, and there always remains mysterious people's choices. You know, even like in mainstream music, they try and pre-predict what next song is going to be the hit, and they can't because you ultimately float whatever that thing is out there, and then people, one by one, and then the whole collective effervescence thing, and then collectively we make a choice that is an expression of our hearts, and we're going to keep on singing it. And also, I think then you need also enough repetition. I think we're in a situation right now where the worship industry, and that's a loaded phrase in of itself, but let's just say the worship industry has tried so desperately to keep on recreating some of these evergreen things. But what they don't understand is that by constantly releasing new songs, we can't handle them.
We run past it.
We just, because the only way something becomes evergreen is through repeated use in a way that is mixed with affection, where we go, the reason why we're doing it again is not because we have to, it's because we want to, because this song speaks for us, right? It's a prayer from our heart to God, or it's an expression of what we feel like God is doing among us right now. So the only way we're going to get more evergreen songs, and we always will, and maybe it's just that matter of we just accept, okay, you know what? The people will choose eventually.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you say the Spirit will choose, like it'll be touched with something that people keep on wanting to, you know, I don't know, like.
Have you noticed something special about how they arrive?
That's a good question.
I mean, is there anything in your songwriting
I would say about half and half. It's like it's very interesting. About half of them had very special arrivals. Refiner's Fire, Come Now's the Time to Worship. But songs like Faithful One, songs, I'm trying to think of like Hallelujah, Your Love is Amazing. So I'd say about half of my quote unquote bigger songs came incredibly specially, and others were just a
Thursday.
Yeah, that's like my normal Friday morning. Oh, I should write a song about that. Okay. And I sit down and write it, and I rewrite it, and I draft one and draft two, and eventually I go, I think that's done, and I float it on out there, and people go, oh, thank you very much.
But in the moment, it didn't feel particularly special to you.
No.
I love that. I so love that.
So it's literally...
Sometimes it does.
Sometimes it feels incredible. Like I'm weeping. I
know this has juice.
There's fire in me, and I go, this is incredible. And now I've had that experience with songs that then tend to not do much.
Yeah, I love that too. What a great story.
And then I've had songs, where I feel nothing and they do a lot. So it's just, it's the whole gamut. Yeah. It's the whole continuum.
So weird, isn't it? Yeah, we look for the pattern, don't we? We're like, if we do this, then we'll get the, love it.
Do you still feel surprised? We're at our session on Wednesday at the conference. We sing Refiner's Fire. Just from the Denver conference alone, I've heard so many people say they were just reduced to a puddle.
Yeah.
And smacked in the face with God's presence. What is that experience like for you? Do you feel surprised? Does it feel like, well, I guess we're singing Refiner's Fire again? I mean, how does that go for you?
Well, I mean, Refiner's Fire is interesting because, of course, I got to a place where I couldn't sing the song anymore because of my concern over one of the words in the song. Right. So Master started to got to a place where it was hard for me as I grew in friendship with the Black community, and I started realizing what language like Master does if that becomes the primary metaphor for God. It's a power over word. And I understood my 23-year-old self.
Yeah.
Sure.
Wanting to surrender my whole life, wanted to be consecrated. And I still have that desire, but ultimately I don't think it's sustainable if all God is overpowering us. Like we have to be sustained by love. So then I eventually wrestle with it, and I rewrite one word, and I change Master to make really 2 letters within one word, and it changed the trajectory for me so I could reclaim it. But yes, to your question about surprise, I'm surprised it happened in the first place. It was just a simple prayer that I wrote. So I'm still surprised at the depth of connection it brings for people, and it helps me. It just helps me reconnect with it too, because then I go, oh yeah, this is still my heart. This is still my prayer, and I can still sing this from my heart. But I'm just me, right? So like some of these songs you can get to the place where, okay, do we have to sing that song again?
Yeah.
And you kind of feel tired of it. And I had to let it go for a while. But then when you're in the room with people, and then you float and you start and it just clicks and you feel that thing, then you go, okay, I'm willing, even if I didn't need this today, some other people maybe did,
Yeah, that's just the part of being a worship leader that it's just serving the room.
Yeah.
I'm here to help.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll land here, Brian. Part of the idea with the Wednesday night session was that in some very particular way, Vineyard songs are distillations of our story.
Mm-hmm.
That whatever God has done through the Vineyard people, it tends to show up in our songs.
Yeah.
It's like a little collection. You want to know who we are? Well, just look at our songs. You'll know who we are.
Yeah.
And I really believe that. And because of that, I would love to know what you'd want to say to our current Vineyard songwriters.
Wow. Well, part of what I'd say is don't forget the story. And ask questions. Like, get curious. Like if you get a chance to see Cindy Rethmeyer, ask her what was it like to be the first woman leading worship in the vineyard when it was not. I mean, it's hard for us to even comprehend now, right? Like
it seems silly, doesn't it?
It almost seems silly, and yet at that point,
it's like smoking on a plane.
Yeah,
people did that.
That's
people
in reverse.
I can't imagine.
Yeah, they're like, we're 30,000 feet in the air. It's a pressurized chamber. Can somebody just pass me a cigarette?
Adam, you went there right now. That's hilarious. I'm talking about Cindy and women worship leading, and you go to smoking on plane. But I totally get the connection.
It seems absurd, doesn't it?
It seems absurd
Yeah.
that women would not be given. In fact, one of the key reasons I'm actually in the vineyard was when I described driving 40 hours, if you remember that at the beginning of the conversation, and walking in the back of the room, it was the fact that actually Danny was up there too, and I have great affection for Danny. But the very first thing I heard was a woman's voice singing, "You Are Here." And for me, and I've kind of made it part of my thing in life, is to try and encourage, raise up, mentor, make tons of room for women, strong women leaders, because I think we need their voices. And so anyway, I'm getting off the trail here.
Yeah,
but
ask Cindy.
Yeah, that would be one of the things. Like be curious with anybody that you can access that was there at the beginning, that understands what that DNA, what those values were, what the whole experience was, walking with John, sensing the freshness, sensing the life, and yet the respect for the whole church, not just being like cocky, like we're it, like it's, but like, what else could I say to the young vineyard worship writers in every generation is, lean into like both the mystery and the heart of this. Like, we don't need the volume of songs. What we need are the one thing songs, the seeds of inspiration that are genuinely those precious seeds. So write less, but take more time. You use the word distillation or refine. Another word, refine. Like, take more time to distill it. Take more time to refine it. Take more time to wait, so that then the songs that we actually write and release are saying one thing.
Weighty. They
have weight.
Yeah.
They have, and then and with that, learn the craft. Like, you also, there's craft things about songwriting that we can all learn and improve. And I'm still learning and improving. And as a songwriting instructor, I'm still constantly researching, how can I explain this better? How can I be a better songwriter? What can I learn? Whenever a song really takes off, I'm asking the questions. I'm trying to be curious. Okay, what is it?
Yeah, can I notice that?
What can I notice about this particular song that I can interpret in my unique voice?
That's great. It's instantly applicable for every one of us. Know the story. Pray more, wait more, maybe write a little less.
Yeah.
Like, wait for that real nugget of an idea.
Yeah.
Learn a little craft.
Yeah.
Don't disagree. Brian, thank you for hanging out with us today. Thanks for coming, as Nicole said, all the way from Canada twice to hang out with us. We feel so privileged.
So grateful.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. Peace.
Hey everyone, Casey Coram here, producer of the podcast. Thanks for listening. As always, if you've been enjoying the podcast, here's a few ways you can help us. First of all, leave us a review on the podcast platform of your choice. This helps more people find us. Also, connect with us on social media. Instagram at the Ferment Podcast and Twitter at FermentCast. All right, everyone, thanks for listening. See you next week. Peace.